Much of what we learn about science, nature, and the environment happens outside of school and beyond the walls of museums, zoos, and nature centers. I have worked as an independent environmental professional for many years and know there are others like me who interact with the public in communities worldwide. On the Talaterra podcast, we discover who these professionals are, what they do, and how they create change. Why do I focus on independent professionals? I focus on them because they move freely through communities. They move freely between schools, organizations, businesses, programs, and other informal learning environments. They are positioned to meet the public where they are, and this is powerful. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Tanya Marion. Hi, it's Tanya. I'm so glad to welcome you to today's episode. Today, my guest is Dr. Raquel Pinderhughes, Executive Director of the Roots of Success Environmental Literacy and Job Training Program. This program introduces participants to career pathways in environmental fields and to improving social and environmental conditions in communities. Dr. Pinderhughes is a professor of urban studies and planning at San Francisco State University. She teaches courses about sustainable development, environmental justice, and alternative urban futures. Dr. Pinderhughes is an internationally recognized expert on green jobs training, and environmental literacy. Her green job training model was used to form the Oakland Green Job Corps and inform the development of the Obama administration's Pathways Out of Poverty initiative. I'm excited to introduce you to Roots of Success and the change it has created in communities across the United States. Let's join the conversation. Raquel, welcome, and thank you for being on the show today. I've been reading about your work with Roots of Success. I met Douglas, your program manager, at a past meeting, and I was just amazed and absolutely taken with everything that he shared about your program. And so I have so many questions, but I will start here. How did you come to start this work? Was the decision to create this environmental literacy and work readiness program a conscious decision, or was it a reaction to an event?
It was a conscious decision, but like many decisions, it came out of an iterative process. I have always been concerned with improving quality of life for people who live in low-income communities. And I've always been very interested in the importance of employment in people's lives, particularly meaningful, dignified employment. And as I did my work in the environmental planning and policy fields as a professor and as an activist, and as more and more emphasis was placed on transitioning away from fossil fuels and towards more ecologically and socially responsible ways of living in the world, and as green jobs became more, the growth of green jobs became more prevalent and important, I became very interested in understanding how people in low-income communities and communities of color could benefit from the emergence and the growth of environmental sectors and green jobs. And it was pretty clear that we didn't have at that time in the 1980s training programs that were specifically going to provide individuals who were bearing the disproportionate burden of environmental problems and injustices with opportunities to benefit from the emerging green economy and also to improve conditions in their own communities. And so I did a study with employers in 22 sectors of the green economy, every sector except for manufacturing. And I asked those employers in very deep, long interviews, what would it take for you to hire youth and adults for entry-level jobs in your firm who have lower levels of education, have been impacted by the criminal legal system, do not have college degrees? What are you looking for in job applicants, and what would they need to have in order to be able to interview with you and potentially be hired in your firms? And I learned many, many things. some of which were quite distinct amongst different employers in different sectors. But across all of them, one of the things that they said consistently was, we are interested in job applicants who understand the mission of our firm. We want them to understand the work that we're doing. They have to be able to understand how we're contributing to society, how we're creating alternatives to certain ways of living in the world. They have to be able to work in teams and ask questions. They have to be able to talk to clients. It's important that they understand why we're doing the work. Not so much that they have the hard skills, but that they actually understand the work. And for me, the proof positive of that was that many of my students in environmental studies, urban studies, and geography were being hired for entry-level jobs in green firms, most of which they were not interested in staying in, and saw more as internship opportunities or opportunities for starting their professional careers. And so it was very clear that the skills that college graduates have are the skills that employers are looking for, even in entry-level jobs across environmental sectors. If you're going to be a water waste treatment operator, or if you're going in as a produce buyer in a large-scale supermarket, or if you're going to work in heat pump installations or transportation, it really is important that you understand why the work is important from an employer's perspective. And so I created a green job training model called the Pinderhughes model, came to be called the Pinderhughes model, which was different from many other job training models in that it included all of the traditional things that people need to be able to do when they apply for work, but it included a very rigorous environmental literacy component. And I was very fortunate enough to have that model be brought to the Obama administration during the development of the Pathways Out of Poverty program with ARA funding, American Resource and Recovery dollars. And that model was used by the Department of Labor to fund to develop the RFP that would eventually allow programs to be funded to start green job training programs, particularly for people in poverty. It became very clear as we started to roll out the funding and the programs, which I was consulting to, that there was not a place in community colleges or within job training programs where people who had been failed by the education system could learn about and think about and build their knowledge and skills in relationship to an understanding of environmental problems and solutions, and as importantly, an understanding of the role that they could play as both professionals and activists in the emerging green economy. So I created Roots of Success, which is a 10-module course, and now a pre-apprenticeship program and an apprenticeship program where we train teachers to teach environmental literacy in order to meet the needs specifically of youth and adults who have been failed or poorly served by the education system and have significant barriers to employment. And that means that it's a program that addresses the holistic needs of individuals who have been failed by multiple systems. So teaching environmental literacy, teaching people to understand environmental issues, is an important component of the program. But an equally important part of the program is building up people's foundational academic literacy skills and helping them develop their professional skills and helping them develop the confidence and familiarity with a range of new opportunities and helping them to become financially literate, and also training them and supporting them to become activists who can bring people together to fight environmental injustice, gentrification, etc. So it was very intentional. It was very iterative. One thing built upon the other. I was responding to a need and working with people that were helping me to understand some of the ways that we could support those people who are living in frontline communities and bear the disproportionate burden and are locked out of decision-making circles to, in fact, get the knowledge and the skills and the entree and the certifications, very importantly, that they need in order to increase their interest in working in environmental jobs. Environmental spaces have largely been spaces that have not welcomed the people who are most deeply impacted by environmental injustices, to help them understand the wide range of opportunities that were available to them, and then to increase their knowledge and skills so that they could actually be working in these fields and actually making contributions to their communities as community activists. So it was quite intentional.
There are many layers to what you do, as you just described, you touched upon all these different layers just now in your answer. How did you figure out who to speak with in the beginning and what you needed to do the next thing that you wanted to do? There are a lot of people involved.
Well, identifying employers for the research study of with employers, that was pretty easy. Identifying the green firms, both public, for-profit, and nonprofit, was pretty easy. And then, I'm a professor and a researcher, so I have good research skills. That's probably a plus. And I had some really great students at San Francisco State University where I teach who worked with me, and we reached out to employers and wrote a compelling letter telling them what we were interested in. These firms, many of them were emerging and just beginning to grow and develop their clientele and their services. And in terms of the agencies, they were already quite experienced. And there was no resistance at all. Employers were very willing to talk with me. I already had a reputation in the field for doing this work, so that was not difficult at all. Developing the curriculum, again, something that I did after doing many other things. The curriculum and the content of the curriculum come very directly from the teaching that I have done for almost 40 years in the fields of environmental planning and policy, and also working very deeply as an activist in moving forward the goals of social equity and justice. And I also have done a tremendous amount of work working with incarcerated populations and populations impacted by the criminal legal system. So I built on all of those things. I had also written a textbook on how we can plan for sustainable development in cities. And I used much of the content from that textbook to develop the actual content of the modules themselves. There's a very, very close relationship between that text and the modules, the content in the modules. And it was very much based on what I have been doing for so many years, which is teaching. I'm a teacher, and that's probably my most important identity and what I do best. I don't do a lot of things really well, but I am a very good teacher. And I'm particularly skilled because I've worked with populations that have been failed by multiple systems. I'm particularly skilled in helping people to develop knowledge and skill at a very, very high level, but delivering the information in a way that is deeply relevant to their lived experiences, and also enabling them to build skills linearly and with time that are important for them to use as foundational for new knowledge and skills. So I don't think it was very hard to find people to talk to, and it wasn't at all difficult to find fantastic students at San Francisco State to work with. And it was relatively easy to use my years of teaching experience and writing in the field to develop the curriculum. What was more challenging, and what remains challenging, is getting people to know about the work that we do. We have no marketing budget. We have no outreach team. We're just sitting in our offices basically developing curriculum and teaching materials and training teachers and delivering our course. And I think the biggest challenge for us is being known. And once we're known, people want to work with us because we do things, our program is of very, very high quality, and it's very cost efficient and can be delivered very easily in the settings in which we work. But being known, finding people who will be interested in working with us, that's been our biggest challenge, I think, in terms of people.
When you started with this, with your original group of students, how did you earn the trust from prospective partners, from the other students, and from your immediate community and the people who you were reaching out to? How did that happen?
Yes, I was very fortunate to have the Green Jobs Training model and the Green Jobs Training workforce development work that I have been doing for a long time to be brought to the White House and embedded in the Pathways Out of Poverty program funded with the American Resource and Recovery dollars. And that meant that the programs that were applying for funding were going to respond to an RFP, which required them to have an environmental literacy component in their training program. That's actually very unusual in job training. There are very rarely requests or requirements for people to deeply understand the world of work. Phlebotomists don't learn about the healthcare system, and security guards don't learn about bureaucracies. And, job training is usually designed to give people soft skills or hard skills and get them into the labor market as fast as possible. And quite frankly, off the welfare rolls for, in its original intent. So I think having an environmental literacy component as a requirement forced or motivated or incentivized the directors of these programs to look for environmental literacy programs that could meet the needs of their students, or participants would be a better word, most of whom came from communities where they had been in schools that had poorly served them. And so and also came from frontline communities. And so program directors were looking for literacy components that would be directly relevant to the lived experiences of their students, that would meet their needs holistically, and that the students would find fun and engaging. And so that kind of moved them to roots of success. And so the original partners were usually partners that were funded with the Pathways Out of Poverty dollars. Those were the original programs that we worked with. And then from there, people told more people about our program. It's just word of mouth. It's still just word of mouth. And then, as importantly, because I've worked in prison education for a very, very long time, I was able to build relationships with departments of corrections. And because I've worked in prison education for a long time, I was able to build a model that worked for departments of corrections. And our model in prisons is very, very unique. And I hope you ask me some questions about it. But our original partners were those early programs funded with ARA dollars that needed an environmental literacy course, and relationships with staff in departments of corrections who were willing to, who were interested in moving forward. I should say one other thing. I had another opportunity which was very important. I was commissioned, along with a couple of other scholars, to write the first report for the Federal Department of Corrections on the greening of prisons. And in that report, I was responsible for writing the section on how to prepare incarcerated individuals for work in the green economy. So that also positioned me to be better known amongst departments of corrections, and to get invited to conferences, and to make presentations, and to make the case that what we were doing was quite unique, and that the model would fit very well inside of prisons and jails and juvenile facilities. So I was very fortunate also to have been commissioned to write that first report for the Federal Department of Corrections called The Greening of Prisons. So, a number of things that were built on my career previously and my expertise positioned me to get in touch with people at that early stage, and then they would tell other people about it. And it's still mostly word of mouth.
There are 10 customized versions of the Roots of Success curriculum to serve different student populations in various settings. Can you offer some insight into how these versions differ, and also then elaborate on your program inside prisons as well?
Yes. So those are two very different questions, but I'll take the first one first. So it is our pedagogy, our teaching approach is designed to build on the lived experiences of the individuals in our classes. And there are many benefits to that approach. The first benefit is that it allows people to come into the room already having what they need to be successful, and to get the message that they already have what they need to be successful. So you're starting out very strong in that way. It also allows people to immediately contribute to the discussion because they're able to build on their lived experiences. And so unlike many educational settings where the teacher has knowledge that they're going to impart to the students and the students come in, tabula rasa, this is a very, very different teaching approach. This teaching approach assumes that the students already have a huge amount of knowledge, and it is our shared experience, learning together, building on what each other has experienced and what each other knows, that allows us to continue to build additional knowledge and skills. And of course, the Roots of Success curriculum guides the development of knowledge and skills, but it is built and around people sharing their lived experiences. And so because people's lived experiences are so central to the pedagogical approach, we have to have customized versions. We have to have versions that allow people to see themselves it's a multimedia interactive course. And so we have to have videos and visuals that allow people to see themselves when they look at the screen. We have to have activities that allow people to find the content and the situation and the activities that we're creating to be directly relevant to their lived experiences. We have to have content that speaks directly to the communities from which they come and which is broad enough to meet the needs of a very diverse range of students who are in the class. Because although people may share the experience of being low income, they are very diverse in many other ways, in every other way. And so the pedagogical approach requires customization. It's also very important for customization in terms of the wide range of settings in which we work. We work in prisons and jails and juvenile facilities. We work in high schools and youth programs. We work in job training programs and reentry programs. Our program has been taught in homeless shelters. We work in a wide range of workforce and educational settings. So about 80% of the content across all of the customized versions is the same. And that's basically teaching people about the root causes of environmental problems and injustices, the approaches that they can use to address those problems and injustices, and then helping them prepare for, in our case, 70 different jobs and 111 different career pathways. And so we customize versions for incarcerated adults, for incarcerated youth. There are 3 different versions for youth who are in high school. Youth that are high school age, rather, youth that are in high school, youth that are not in high school. There are versions in Spanish. There's an online version. There are versions for low-income social entrepreneurs. And there are versions that are customized for particular places around the country. So the goal of the customization, the 20% difference, is really in the spaces within the curriculum where people are seeing themselves, talking about the places they come from, and customizing it for them becomes very critical in those spaces and places within the classroom experience. Customization is the hardest part.
I can't even imagine. I mean, that would, as you've described it, that would take a lot of investigation, planning, thought. It's just amazing to me that there are that many versions and that it's so thoughtfully planned out.
We have our team has changed over almost 15 years of work now. I've always been very fortunate to have incredibly talented and dedicated coworkers. My original team, we were almost all volunteer for the first 12 years, including myself as the ED. We had mostly my students from San Francisco State, or they had graduated and were willing to work with me. And now we have a paid staff. My work as the ED is obviously very ambassadorial, and there's a lot of that. But mostly I work on curriculum development. The biggest chunk of my time is on updating the material, customizing the material, and making sure that it really speaks to the different experiences of the individuals that we work with and the settings in which we work. That's about 50 to 60% of my time is spent on curriculum development.
Can you tell us about the programs that you have in prison and that model?
Yes, I will. So we have a very unique model in prisons, and it's unique in many, many ways, but I'll just speak to some of the most important ways. So first, our program is directed and taught by incarcerated individuals to their peers. Most of our teachers are serving long and life sentences, and giving them an opportunity to use their talents and their important position as role models within the prison, and their commitment to try to help people to leave prison and never return again. Their dedication to that is really extraordinary. Most of our teachers, I would say 99%, are paid full-time to work with our program and teach our courses and mentor our students which they do day and night. We have a program that puts prison staff, prison administrators, into very supportive roles vis-a-vis incarcerated populations. And we contribute to a more caring and trusting relationship between DOC staff and incarcerated individuals. Our curriculum is based on a philosophy of love, and it is a curriculum that is scripted, so everybody is teaching the same thing all the time. We have a very rigorous training program for our teachers, and we help them understand our pedagogical approach, and our curriculum actually guides them to constantly support the individuals who are in the room, to build community, to build trust. For example, concretely, people are constantly working together in small groups to solve problems. And then they come back and they solve those problems, or they learn about these things, and then they teach each other about what they're learning. So our pedagogical approach is quite unusual in a setting of incarceration because it's so caring. We also allow people to think about the root causes of many of the problems that they are experiencing and position them to think about how to reduce those problems, not only outside in the community, but also inside the prison. Our students start every single environmental focused and social justice focused program you could imagine. They start programs, they start urban gardens, they start beekeeping, they start raising tilapia, they start creating compost, they recycle everything you could possibly imagine, including the food waste to make fertile soil. They start vermiculture with worms. They start working in the landscaping crew, and they take additional training in horticulture. I mean, everything that you could possibly imagine that comes directly from how they're learning about how we have degraded and disrespected the natural resource base, but also we have exploited other human beings. And we have to create programs that not only address the ecological challenges that we're facing, but also build community amongst people and fight for social justice and equity. And so they start programs that support one another, and they reach out to one another in ways that are supportive and caring. Not that they haven't been doing some of that before, the supportive, caring work, but we nurture that and we reinforce that. So we give people an opportunity behind bars to put into practice many of the solutions that need to be put into practice in the world, and that usually within a prison setting, you're not able to do. I was training 4 new instructors who were incarcerated in Ohio yesterday to be trainers who will train new teachers in the prison system in Ohio. And they were talking about how they have their own offices. They have their own teaching hours. They have their own spaces that they can, store their materials in. They are deeply respected within the prison system by their peers and by administration and staff. They are relied upon to make recommendations for how to improve quality of life inside the prison. They do research studies to talk about how we can save water and how we can save energy. And they very often collectively, and this is very well documented by us, save their institutions hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings in water and waste and energy costs. And speaking about this training that I just did last week and then following up with these 4 master trainers this morning, they were actually giving me the numbers that were being saved by food waste diversion, solid waste diversion, growing food, working for Ohio State University to take their solid waste and sell their cardboard and sell their aluminum cans. And they use these funds to support environmental and social justice-oriented programs within the prison. So it's a very unique program in other ways as well. Another very important feature is that almost all of the sustainability jobs, or, prisons are like small cities, and they have energy and water and waste and, transportation and food related jobs. Almost all of those jobs, you have to go through the Roots of Success course in order to be eligible for those paid jobs. And some of those paid jobs allow people to leave and work outside the gate for $20 an hour, which is an extraordinarily high wage for somebody who's incarcerated. So the fact that our course becomes the gateway to employment opportunities that are meaningful and dignified and sometimes pay better inside of the prison is very important. And then the fact that we are helping people to understand how to live in the world differently, they can use that information with their families, with people who come to visit them. We have a wonderful story where one of our teachers, who was at that time serving a life sentence, he's now out, was able to work with his wife when she came to visit him and on the telephone to work with their utility company to switch out the refrigerator, to tighten the envelope of the home, to install a new heating system. And he was able to save his family in a state where it's cold in the winter and hot in the summer, on average $400 a month in household energy bills. And he cried when he told that story. He still cries when he tells that story because he was able to contribute $400 a month to his family in those savings. And so those kinds of things happen all the time, where people are able to use the knowledge and skills that they're learning in our classes, the relationships that they build with each other in our classes, and their relationship with DOC staff to not only think about how to improve conditions and improve quality of life, but actually improve conditions and quality of life in the prison. And I would say that the goal is always to shut down every prison and to have everybody who's incarcerated come home. But while people are incarcerated, it is important to give them access to education and job training. It is important to give them meaningful, dignified work. It is important to prepare them to return and never go back again. It is important to give them resources that they can share with the people that they love and with each other. And it's important to position them as people who can use their talents and their energy and their creativity to help others and get paid for it. And Roots of Success does that. So there are many unique features of the program. I could go on and on and on. We really change people's behavior. We reduce violence between incarcerated individuals and staff and between incarcerated individuals and others. So there are a lot of really positive and very unique features, and we would like our program model to be duplicated at larger scale in other programs.
So you produced a 10-year report, and as you said, you document all sorts of things in your program. Who do you share the reports with?
Right. So the way in which people learn about Roots of Success is primarily word of mouth. Somebody's using the program in their program, and they tell somebody else that it's great, and somebody calls us and we talk to them, and they realize that it would make an important contribution to the work that they're doing. So the people who read the 10-year report are usually the people who are interested in learning about our program. So somebody will tell somebody else that, Roots of Success is an interesting program. It brings a lot of value. Call the staff, get in touch with the staff, set up a meeting. And we'll set up a meeting, and the first meeting is basically designed to learn about the program. What are you trying to do? What is your mission? Who's the population that you're working with? What are some of the opportunities that you have? What are some of the challenges that you're facing? Where might we play a meaningful role as a partner? And after that, we send people follow-up materials. And the 10-year report is one amongst many follow-up materials. If you go to our website, there's a lot of materials. I'm a professor, so there's a lot of materials up there. But the 10-year report is mostly read by people who are interested in learning more about our program. And it actually serves us very well. The one thing that the 10-year report doesn't do is it doesn't reflect the fact that over the last 2 years, we've become a federally registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship program, and we're also registered in many states. But aside from that, it does a really good job of documenting what we do, how we do it, how we bring value to programs that are working in these spaces, and what our actual impact is. We have a very high rate of employment, enduring employment. We have a very, very low rate of recidivism. We have a very, very high rate of people improving their academic skills. In prisons, our courses very often used to help people pass the GED. So we document the savings, both in tons of material saved and also in cost. And we document the transformative impact of our curriculum as well, or of our course, I should say. So I would say it's new partners, but partners that haven't yet decided if they want to work with us and are trying to learn about us.
And you do outline very clearly the change that your programs have brought about in the tenure report. So listeners, I encourage you to read the report, download it, and then share it.
And then call us to talk about how we can work together.
Okay. All right. And so you mentioned the apprenticeship program. So Roots of Success is the first federally recognized environmental literacy instructor apprenticeship in the United States. What does this mean?
I like the way that rolls off your tongue. That makes me feel very happy. What it means is that we are now positioned to provide the teachers who work with us not only the rigorous training that we have always provided, but additional mentorship and certification. And it means that we are able, because of our particular program focus, to train a generation of people who are going to teach environmental literacy, who come from the communities most impacted by environmental problems and injustices. The most important point here is that the teachers that we are training to be environmental literacy teachers are not coming out of college, which is where most teachers come from. They are coming directly out of our apprenticeship program, the only one of its kind in the country. And so we're able to reach into communities that have been disenfranchised from college education, disenfranchised from professional opportunities, and build on the incredible knowledge that they have gained through their life experience, educational and training experiences that they've had outside of ours, and very importantly, our training, and the opportunity to teach our course, to be able to contribute to people's understanding of environmental problems and injustices and the way in which we need to address them through a social and environmental justice lens, through the lens of frontline communities, and through the lens of compassion and caring for many people that our society has disregarded and not included. So I think we should feel fantastic about the fact that not only are we contributing to the next generation of people who are teaching environmental literacy, but we are also bringing new people into the field who would otherwise be completely left out. The other thing that I think is very unique about our apprenticeship program is that we're not only teaching teachers to teach environmental literacy, we are teaching them to train their students to be able to work in environmental fields. And most environmental literacy or environmental studies teachers don't do that. They teach about environmental problems and how we can address them, but they don't prepare people for workforce opportunities that are well-paying, workforce opportunities where there's occupational mobility, workforce opportunities that are directly relevant to the lived experiences of the people who are taking our classes. So I think that element is also very unique. In addition, our apprenticeship is based on our pedagogy. And so we're producing a group of teachers who are going to teach using a pedagogy based on love, a pedagogy based on building community, a pedagogy based on deeply respecting people's lived experiences, a pedagogy based on having people be part of a learning community, which is quite different from a traditional banking model, which is, how many students go through school. And so there are many very important values to this apprenticeship. Also, we are providing people who I said, usually don't have the opportunity to go to college. Some of them may not have a high school degree or a GED, with a certificate that has real meaning in the world. It's a career technical education certificate. And there are some states in which you can use your CTE certificate to immediately teach in secondary education. There are other states where you have to pair it with higher or more additional and complementary levels of training. And in both situations, we're either positioning people to be able to teach with the CTE credential, or we're positioning them to start their careers and get additional education.
This is the part where I can say is fantastic, because when I first learned about your program, that's all I could say. Okay, so the graduates of the Roots of Success Environmental Literacy and Job Training Program receive industry-relevant certifications. How many different types of certifications? Can you give some examples?
It's called an industry-recognized certification. That's the term that is used by the Department of Labor, and we offer only one. Our students go through our pre-apprenticeship program, and they earn an environmental specialist certification. So they are generalists who deeply understand the water, waste, transportation, energy, building, food, health, agriculture, and open space environments, and who understand some of the ways in which we have managed these sectors in ways that are ecologically and socially problematic and irresponsible, and who understand how we can transition to more ecologically and socially responsible ways of doing things, and who can then be hired in public, private, and nonprofit firms, businesses, agencies, organizations, where they can apply what they've learned to do the work that those organizations, agencies, firms, et cetera, are doing in the water, waste, energy, transportation, et cetera, sectors. So it's a general environmental specialist certification, but it is an industry recognized certification, and employers highly value that certification. And when our graduates are able to say that they have a pre-apprenticeship certificate or certification as an environmental specialist in a resume that they have developed and a cover letter that they have developed within the Roots of Success course, having also gone through mock interviews and done a tremendous amount of work practicing and stretching their communication skills, they're ready to step into an interview with an employer and to make a really strong impression on an employer without a college degree, sometimes without a high school or GED, without having the presentation of the middle class dominant society, without necessarily having a lot of education behind them or even work experience behind them. But with that credential and the training that we provide and the lived experience that they bring, as well as everything else that they've learned, they are ready to submit their materials to an employer and interview with an employer, and if they're hired, to really do an amazing job on the job and to have occupational mobility over time. You know, it's important to us to train people for entry-level jobs because that's more likely where they will start, but to not lock them into entry-level jobs. And so we prepare people for 70 entry-level jobs across these sectors, but then we also prepare them for 111 different career pathways where with additional training, additional schooling, additional professional experience, they can actually have more occupational mobility. I also want to mention, Tanya, because it's very important to me and to my colleagues, that we are also very committed to helping people to become skilled in community organizing and activism. We are very committed to helping people find really good employment opportunities. We must increase their economic security. We must position them to be in dignified, meaningful, well-paying jobs. We must position them for occupational mobility. But we also have to position them to participate in discussions and decisions that directly impact the people that they care about, the communities that they come from, and society more broadly. They have a lot to contribute. We have a very robust community organizing and leadership module as one of our 10 modules. And we also have a very robust financial literacy and social entrepreneurship module. So we're positioning people to interview with existing, as I said, public, private, and for-profit organizations and firms, et cetera, agencies, but we're also positioning them to participate in decision-making bodies, and we're also positioning them to start their own small businesses.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this is perfect. Takes me to this question that I have here. So I'm curious about that module, the financial literacy and social entrepreneurship module, both from a freelancing perspective and from an ESG perspective. The training, the certification, the advocacy, and all the wonderful ways that people from your programs are supported. The thought came to me that it seems to me that these are really wonderful individuals who are really positioned well to have ESG type conversations, corporate social responsibility type conversations.
What does ESG stand for?
ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And
okay.
so that's the type of activities that, say, a company sustainability team,
Yeah, of course.
to have those conversations in-house, and then also with the external partners. I was wondering what types of social entrepreneurship projects have been developed, and then also is there a pathway about corporate social responsibility or that addresses ESG and really sets the foundation to have those types of conversations, in the future and to move further along in those particular fields.
Right. Good question. So I'll try to answer it slowly because there's a lot of questions inside of that question. We included a module on financial literacy and social entrepreneurship very intentionally and for two very specific reasons. One, because it's very important for the population that we work with to have an opportunity to think through how they can manage their finances well, especially because in the beginning, people will be earning a limited income with the hopes that their income will increase over time. And there will be many demands very often on that income, that limited income. And so we wanted to give people an opportunity not only to learn how to manage their finances and their assets, but also how to think through how to relate to the people around them, many of whom are embedded in low-income communities and low-income families, to think about how they were going to manage their income. The social entrepreneurship component was introduced because we work with so many people who have been impacted by the criminal legal system, and in check-the-box states, they may not have the opportunity to be hired by employers, although there are no legal barriers to their being hired. There are many social barriers to their being hired. And also because there are barriers to their being able to be included in pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, which we're now learning about. And so we thought it was very important to give people the opportunity to start their own businesses based on the knowledge that they were developing inside of the curriculum. And people have gone on to do that. So our graduates have gone on to start many small businesses. And I will get to the corporate responsibility question in a minute, but our graduates have gone on to start many small businesses. Many of them are businesses that are designed, or nonprofits that are designed to help people who have been in similar situations of themselves. So those would be kind of social justice, social service organizations. But many of them do start those organizations. But others have gone on to start organizations and nonprofits that specifically address ecological issues. So we have people who have started businesses in landscaping. We have people who have started nursery businesses. We have people who have started horticulture businesses. We have people who have started recycling and reuse sort of recovery businesses. We have people who have started environmental education businesses. We have people who have started businesses, they're all nonprofit businesses, but businesses that are designed to help people who are coming out of prison to return, to find housing and to find services. We have people who have started food industry businesses. I've covered a lot of territory, so that range of businesses are the ones that come to mind most immediately. I would say with regard to issues of ESG and corporate responsibility, as you are talking about them, the best examples that we have of individuals who are in those positions are actually individuals who are incarcerated, who are helping departments of corrections figure out how to be more sustainable within those institutions. And again, prisons are small cities. Sometimes they're big cities. and they're composed of multiple institutions and facilities. So many of our incarcerated teachers and graduates are sitting on committees with administrators where they are helping them think through issues of, dare I call it, corporate responsibility, but Department of Correction responsibility. And that is absolutely equivalent to doing that work inside of Google or inside of any other corporation. So I think that really is where we have examples of that. We also have examples of graduates, because we've been around for almost 15 years now, who have worked their way up to become directors of programs, meaningful administrators in programs, skilled professionals within firms, and they are definitely contributing to conversations around sustainability in not necessarily corporations, but in small businesses, in nonprofits, in public agencies. They are sitting at the table participating in discussions about sustainability and corporate responsibility, not so much corporate responsibility, but environmental and social responsibility. So we have examples of people who are doing that, absolutely, because they've moved into those positions in their workplaces. But I think the best examples, again, are actually inside departments of corrections, where we have many examples of our graduates and teachers being the experts who are helping staff develop programs, and very impressive programs, very impactful programs. We had a group of students that were on fire to reduce water in their housing unit. And they did a study where they took a cup and they measured the amount of water that individuals were wasting as they were brushing their teeth, just brushing their teeth. And when they added up all of the individuals in the facility and 365 days of the year, they were over 1 million gallons of water wasted. And they worked with administrators and staff to create a public education campaign inside their institution to get people to use water more responsibly, which was highly effective and impactful. Everybody, not everybody, but large numbers of people participated. And they literally changed the way water is being used in that institution. And it had a radiating effect within that state more broadly. So those kinds of initiatives are very common for our graduates and our teachers to engage in, and they do reflect participation in conversations about institutional responsibility, absolutely, and change of behavior.
Wonderful examples everywhere that you look. The stories that you share on your website, in your report, the stories that you've shared here, it's impressive, it's touching, it's heartwarming, it's, oh my goodness, I'm so glad there's somebody doing this type of work. It's eye-opening.
Well, I will only say in response that I feel very blessed to be able to do this work. Mm-hmm. It is a privilege to be able to work with the incredibly dedicated teachers that we have in our teaching community, and with our students, and with the program partners that we work with, including departments of corrections and juvenile facilities and jails, which are obviously some of the most oppressive institutions in society. And yet we are working with people who are really trying to empower people who have been failed by many systems.
You've done so much. I know that there is still a lot left to do.
Too much to do. Yeah. Ask me the question, what else do you need to do? I'll tell you.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
Well, I won't say what's next for me, but I will say that the honor and privilege of becoming a federally registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship program brings with it a lot of new responsibilities, which are primarily associated with having to be more deeply connected to employers and other apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship opportunities, and helping our graduates to move from our class into the next set of positive experiences. And so we are trying to figure out how to raise funds to hire local employment specialists. Since we're not able to be there on the ground and we're a national program, it's very hard for us to do that from our offices. So we would really like to get private funding to hire local employment specialists who will identify apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships that our graduates can go into, and establish personal relationships with employers who they will help understand what our graduates know, and then position them to potentially be interviewed by these employers and hired. So I think the pressure now, and it's a good pressure, is to do more work to help our graduates after they graduate from our program. We've been very, very focused on the program itself and on ensuring that it's of the highest quality, updating the materials all the time, constantly creating new materials, constantly creating, career maps for our students and training job counselors and all sorts of other things. But now we really have to work with our graduates, work with our program partners to help our graduates. We will not directly work with our graduates, but if we can hire local employment specialists, those people can be on the ground working with those programs and our graduates. And then we have to train teachers with our new apprenticeship program. We have a big mentorship component, and we're training our journeymen and women to be the next generation of trainers for our apprentices. So that's very exciting too. Yeah.
How can we support you? The people listening to this episode, how might we help?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think there are two ways in which we need to be supported by the audience of listeners in the ecosystem of which we are a part. One is we need to be better known. So please tell everybody about the Roots of Success Environmental Literacy and Job Training Program, because we are providing a very, very valuable service to the participants, the people that we work with at multiple levels. And because we're very unknown, we can't have as great an impact as we would like. So please tell everybody about us and encourage them to set up a meeting with us, go to our website, and see whether or not we can partner with programs and make a contribution. And the second, quite frankly, is we need to have better connections to funders. We have been a fee-for-service organization for most of our lives, most of our time as a program, and we now are finally realizing the importance of grant funding and donors. So if you have any connections to people who know funders or who know donors, we don't know anything about that world, and we need support. Even just learning about how to approach a donor, for example, we have no idea. So, that kind of support to allow us to scale and have the most impact we can would be the best.
Thank you, Raquel, for being on the show today, for telling us so much about Roots of Success, introducing this wonderful work to us, and for teaching us so much.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you for the work that you do too. It's very inspiring. I really appreciate your connecting us to each other and to the wider public. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed learning about the Roots of Success program and know of people in the green jobs industry, please share this episode with them. For more information about Roots of Success, visit the show notes for this episode at talaterra.com. You can read more about the program's curriculum and download the 10-year report directly from the show notes. Thanks again for stopping by. See you next time.